Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today, Zanu PF Central Committee members have been meeting at Mnangagwa's farm in Kwekwe. And this is a glimpse of what that farm is.
Good day, Zimbabweans. Today is the 25th of May, 2025. We're here at President Mnangagwa's PF farm, where the Central Committee members are taking a tour of his very, very, very successful, good, striving farm, where he's doing horticulture, mixed farming. He's rearing good breeds of cattle, as well as planting wheat, maize, potatoes. It is from Chiti Nika Inowakwa Nevenyayo. We are here to celebrate excellence. We are here to witness firsthand what it means. Chandra Nika, brick upon brick. Kurunzi Nika Shandwa Nevenyayo. This is what His Excellency President Mnangagwa is doing. He's using his hands.
Maybe. But what we must never forget is that only Zanu PF ruling elite and their cronies have actually gained from the so-called Zanu PF land redistribution, in the sense that they are the ones who now own vast farms. As you can see, it's stretching from one horizon to another. Vast farms, specially imported cattle. And ever since the seizure of the former white-owned farms, the Zanu PF ruling elite and their cronies have been the primary beneficiary of that operation. The white farmers, in most cases, were forced to leave the farm with maybe the vehicle he was driving and a few suitcases of his belongings. Everything else was left on the farm. If they were cattle, he was not allowed to sell them, leave them. If he had harvested any crops, tobacco, maize, whatever it is, he wasn't allowed to sell them, leave them. And any improvements that these white farmers would have done over the years on these farms, they walked away without being able to recover at least some of their costs. This is what we are talking about. And many of these Zanu PF ruling elite, ever since they got the farms, would have been benefiting from the various schemes supposedly initiated by the party to help the new farm owners increase agricultural production. In most of those cases, they've all but failed. Zimbabwe's agricultural sector collapsed within a few years of the 2000 land redistribution. Farms like this one would no doubt be thriving because they are heavily subsidized. Mnangagwa himself, ever since he got into power, would have been the one behind the so-called command agriculture, where government would spend millions of dollars buying seed, machinery, and other inputs to help farmers produce enough food for the nation. The farmers themselves would get the money. In some cases, when harvest comes, they'll get the money, pocket it, never repay whatever they'd got, claiming that they had a bad year. And the same thing will happen again next year. Zanu PF, when it started the land redistribution, claimed that it was meant to give the landless peasants land, those particularly in the rural areas who were living in overcrowded tribal trust lands. But the reality is the peasants, most of them are still in those overcrowded rural areas. They never got the land. The ruling elite got the land instead. Indeed, the rural people were denied title deeds to the few acres of land on which their hut is built by Ian Smith, the white regime. The reasoning behind it was that if the rural people were given title deeds on the land, they would build themselves decent homes, invest a lot of money in improving their holding, be it by planting trees, digging wells, building proper toilets, etc. This would give the rural peasants economic empowerment. And A. Smith didn't want that for fear that the next thing those rural people will be asking for is political empowerment, the vote. Ironically, Zanu PF has done the same thing. Soon after independence, they were also advised that it would make a lot of sense to give the rural people title deeds to even 1 or 2 acres of land on which their mud hut is built. But the regime has stubbornly refused to do so. And guess what? The rural areas to this day remain Zanu PF's political stronghold for no other reason that the rural people are no more than medieval serfs who are always beholden to Zanu PF. Here is a former Zanu PF MP and a freedom fighter in his own right, explaining why Zanu PF is keeping the rural people poor.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite? and the so-called investors. Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for Zanu PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because at the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. Zanu PF will never have control over them.
This is the tragic reality. We cannot deny that Zanu PF political and economic policies are holding back the whole nation to ransom. It will be amiss to leave it at that. One has got to ask, why is it that 45 years after independence, we have failed to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections? The answer to that is the people made the right decision in the late 1990s when they realized that as long as Zanu PF is able to rig elections, there will be no meaningful political change in the country. So the nation made a consensus decision to elect opposition parties whose primary purpose would be to implement democratic reforms necessary to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. It is a pity that 25 years after MDC CCC was on the political stage, they failed to implement even one token reform. Even when they had the golden chance to do so in the 2008 to 2013 GNU. Worse still, ever since the GNU debacle, MDC CCC leaders have been participating in flawed elections, knowing fully well that they are flawed, and knowing fully well that by participating, they are only giving Zanu PF legitimacy. What has made this situation even worse is that the people themselves, the electorate, have failed to wake up to that reality. That is one of the reasons why we are still stuck with this Zanu PF dictatorship. Zanu PF has no intention of ever holding free, fair, and credible elections. They know, people like Mnangagwa know, that his wealth, he will have to account for it. His big farm, when did he buy it? And over the years, I was earlier on showing a photograph of the maize crop on that farm. A rich harvest, you would say. when he sold the harvest, did he pay anything towards tax? He also is reputed to have a lot of wealth elsewhere. He's reckoned to be one of the richest men in Zimbabwe. And when you are that rich, you've got to make sure that you stay in power, particularly if you can't account for your wealth. Here is another former Zanu PF minister talking about Mnangagwa's wealth.
Are you corrupt? No. In fact, this is laughable. Seriously laughable. First of all, this is an accusation coming from the most corrupt politicians and public officials in the history of our country. They cannot account for the assets that they have. The richest individual in the Republic of Zimbabwe is Emmerson Mnangagwa. The one person who was responsible for setting up Zanu PF companies when he was the Secretary for Finance of the ruling party is Emmerson Mnangagwa. There is no cent that comes from those companies, including a bank, including investments in the region, in countries like Namibia and even South Africa. The person who led the plunder of resources, even in foreign countries such as the Democratic Republic of Congo, leading to the United Nations investigating and coming up with a report that is still there, is Emmerson Mnangagwa, along with the military cabal of General Chiwenga, SP Moyo, the person who brought the Chinese to plunder Chiadzwa diamond resources for Zimbabwe, up to a point where we have, at the very least, over a period from 2007 to 2014, some 12 to 15 billion dollars in diamond revenue that remains unaccounted for, that went into the pockets of individuals. These people have staged a coup, not just to grab power for the sake of grabbing power, but in order to cover up their corruption. That command agriculture was nothing but a looting scheme.
Can we stop Zanu PF rigging the elections? Can we cure ourselves of the curse of rigged elections and bad governance? The answer to that is yes, we can. We had the golden chance to do so during the GNU of 2008 to 2013. We failed to implement even one reform because the MDC leaders, Morgan Tsvangirai and company, sold out. And like I've said, they've been participating in these flawed elections out of greed. They admit it themselves. Here is the quotation from David Coulthard saying exactly what I'm talking about. The problem with Zimbabweans is that we have not been paying attention. We have allowed Chamisa and company to corner us into believing that we do not need democratic reforms. He can win elections because he can plug vote rigging loopholes. In 2018, he told his followers that MDC alliance had stringent measures to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. And they participated in the elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. We can end the case of rigged elections, but first we must accept the political reality on the ground that those whom we at present have entrusted the task of implementing the democratic reforms to end Zanu PF rigging the elections have sold out. It is no exaggeration to say MDC, CCC leaders as Zanu PF Team B playing for Team A to win and for Team A to have political legitimacy. Zimbabwe will soon be moving into the 2028 elections. As long as Zanu PF is able to offer, to have the confidence that the opposition will participate in those flawed elections, they will never implement any reforms. And by the way, these democratic reforms is not just people like myself who have been calling for them. SADC and the AU election observers condemned 2023 elections as flawed. But Zanu PF, as long as they know that the opposition will participate in the flawed elections, they will never implement any reforms. And at the present moment, Zanu PF knows that the opposition will participate. We can be rest assured that Chamisa and company will once again be telling people that they will win the 2028 elections because they've devised ways of winning rigged elections. Hashtag God is in it. The people of Zimbabwe have got to wake up to the reality that if we want free, fair, and credible elections, which is the only way to stop Zanu PF rigging elections, we must have the democratic reforms. This whole idea of thinking that we can win rigged elections because Chamisa has quoted a few biblical verses and insist, hashtag God is in it. After 45 years, we've got to wake up to the reality that that is not going to work. If the people of Zimbabwe do not participate in the 2028 elections, because they know that participating will only give Zanu PF legitimacy, then SADC and the AU will be forced to deny Zanu PF political legitimacy. This is exactly what happened in 2008, leading to the creation of the Global Political Agreement and the MD and the GNU. That is where we want to go. This time we'll see to it that we do implement those democratic reforms. It is not rocket science. It requires a bit of effort to concentrate. But it can be done. We really cannot afford 2028 to be a repeat of 2023 and other elections in the past, where Zanu PF blatantly rigged the process, and we participated only to give Zanu PF legitimacy. It is insane to keep repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. It is insane to keep participating in flawed elections, expecting to win the flawed elections, especially after now 45 years and counting of Zanu PF rigging elections. There is nothing wrong with demanding democratic reforms so that elections are free, fair, and credible. That's because Chamisa and company failed to implement even one token reform. Does not mean we do not need reforms, much less that there is no one else out there who can implement those reforms. I believe making sure that we do not participate in 2028 is Zimbabwe's holy grail. For the coming 3 years. We can stop those naive and gullible Chamisa Chete supporters who were easily conned to participate in flawed elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy. It is insane. We just need to explain it to them. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.